You might want to fasten your seatbelts and buckle up. When I first heard about the announcement of the Acolyte, that it was supposed to be about the Sith while they were in hiding during the High Republic era. And this sounded like an incredible idea. The notion that we were going to see how the Sith were trained and the lore and the history of the Sith from the point of view of the Sith in live action format, because the closest thing we got was some of the comics and the books, and so to see a live action was really appealing to me. The way in my head it sounded like Dexter, but in the galaxy far, far away, trying to keep hiding and doing everything you can to keep your existence a secret from the enemy. We've always had stories from the point of view of the Jedi where the Jedi are the protagonists, but never a Sith Lord or a Sith apprentice. However, as time went on and trailers started to appear, from my point of view, it seemed like it was less and less likely that that's what was going to be the show. And I was uncomfortable seeing an abundance amount of Jedi, as I was led to believe that this show was supposed to be about the Sith. And unfortunately, with the interviews that have coming out and surrounding the Acolyte, people getting upset over what the cast and crew have been saying, sometimes even taking things out of context, people were quick to judge the show before it even aired. But now that it's here, now that it's all out, the first season, how is it? It's fine. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was okay. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, and honestly, it didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth like The Rise of Skywalker did. I wasn't overwhelmed with disappointment, it was just okay. I had problems with the show. It was so predictable. That's all it was. It was super predictable. Like, you knew who the bad guy was. Like, ooh, who's the Sith Lord? Who's the Sith Master? Who's training May? Oh, gee, let me think. Like, who's the one guy that she's been talking to this entire time? Oh my god! It's okay when you know where a story is going to go, but at the end of the day, it's all about execution. But like, I think a good example would be like Frequency. If you haven't seen Frequency with Dennis Quaid, I highly recommend you do. Basically, Dennis Quaid's character has been dead for a long time during his line of duty while he was being a firefighter. And so his son, years later, as a grown-ass man, he starts talking to him through his dad's old radio, through time, which was really cool. So he was able to tell his dad of what was about to happen. And even though he saves his dad, it was a snowball effect. There were consequences on top of consequences. So many things started happening involving a serial killer that they have to stop. But there were so many obstacles and so many things, like so many cogs to keep you guessing of how this story's going to go. And it was perfect. The Acolyte doesn't have much of that. There is a few, like with Osha and her Darksider friend, and even the death of many Jedi, who I thought were going to bite dust at the last episode of the season, but instead, almost halfway through, so I gotta give credit where credit's due. By the way, if there's one positive I can really give the show, was its lightsaber fights. Holy mother moly, oh my gosh, it was so gorgeous. It was so fast paced, it looked like a martial arts movie, which was incredible. Tension rose and people just died in so many wonderful ways. Oh my god, our Darksider friend is such a savage. I love it. Speaking of which, there's only 3 characters I really care about, which was Sol, who's a man filled with regret, but like really cares about Osha, almost like a father figure, just an older, wiser Jedi that I really like who's trying to follow his heart, as opposed to the dogmatic view of the Jedi and their warnings of attachment. Our Darksider friend, who seems kind of neat. I like how when he covers himself, he just looks scrawny, but then, you know, hey, he's packing some heat. It feels like something that Palpatine would do, because of course he did. It's the equivalent of Palpatine, like walking around with a little cane, like, oh, I'm an old, weaker man. Oh, ah! And again, I can't stop thinking about Cortosis. I love Cortosis. For the first 7 episodes, I didn't really care much about Osha. There's not much to her. Up until then, I was kind of rooting for her sister. I think her sister was fucking awesome. I mean, with her, it felt like Assassin's Creed, like a proper Assassin's Creed show. It was so cool. Like, she was just like gunning for Jedi, outsmarting them. I mean, she was kick-ass. And I think she looked badass. I really love her look. Shame she had to cut her hair to match with her sister, but whatever. I also think it was a mistake to have the 3rd episode be the flashback episode to show what had happened to May and Osha's coven when they were kids from the point of view of Osha. Because it kind of ruins the suspense and the mystery. Sure, it was from Osha's point of view, but still, the show should have kept me in the dark as much as possible because it felt like I was like 10% away from completing the entire mystery. Like, imagine you're watching Dexter season 1, and instead of having the mystery like spread out across the season and then finally getting all the answers in the last episode, imagine they took all that buildup, all that spread, and place it in the second episode, showing what happened to Dexter as a kid, ruining any incentive to be invested and keeping you on the edge of your seats. Other complaints I have, yeah, that chant was so stupid. Power 1, Power 2, the power of many. Sounds so stupid. I mean, it would have sounded better if it was in another language. I think that would have been more digestible. This show is just riddled with controversy after controversy. Aside from the witch's coven that created a pair of twins, which people have felt negated and completely undermined Anakin Skywalker's importance, which first off, Anakin was not important because of how he was born. He was important for what he has done. Being the hero of the Clone Wars, being the father of Luke and Leia, turning to the dark side to become Darth Vader, only for later on to be redeemed and being the catalyst that defeated the evil that led to the galaxy being free for so long. It still broke the Galactic Empire, regardless of whether you count the sequels or not, it still broke it. Which brings me to Ki-Adi-Mundi. Listen, there were people who were upset over the fact that they changed anything from what was previously stated in other sources for the lore of Star Wars, legends or otherwise. While there were people that were upset over Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday being changed, living longer than we initially thought, just from that prospect alone, there were other people who were upset over the fact that because Ki-Adi-Mundi was there during the Acolyte, how come he didn't know? Or more importantly, why would he have said that the Sith have been seen for 1,000 years, for over a millennium, in the Phantom Menace, when there was a Sith attack that had happened in the Acolyte 100 years prior? Well, number one, why didn't Chewie tell Han that Jedi existed and the Force existed when he knew Yoda and Ahsoka? When in Episode 4, Han just completely chalked the Force at being mystical mumbo-jumbo bullshit. But number two, he doesn't know that it was a Sith. There had been fallen Jedi, and there still continue to be fallen Jedi, whether it was Pong Krell or Barriss Offee. Just because you turn to the dark side doesn't mean you're a Sith, because being a Sith is a religion. A Sith Lord has taken you as their apprentice. You learn about the ideology of the Sith, understanding the importance of the rule of two and upholding it, and continuing their values, their codes, and their religious beliefs. There have been Dark Jedi in Legends with Jarek, from Dark Forces to Jedi Knights. He had multiple followers because he doesn't adhere to the rule of two. Granted, this was before the rule 2 existed, and even the term Sith in the lore of Star Wars, because this came out before the prequel trilogy, but this was still used even after in Legends, because it actually doesn't contradict the Sith because they're their own thing. So instead of contradicting and pretending that Dark Jedi didn't exist, they decided to continue it and leave it be. Ki-Adi-Mundi never said that, oh, this is a Sith Lord. He said that this was a Jedi-trained assassin. And if you finish the season, you understand how and why it all fits. In all fairness, there was no reason to have Ki-Adi-Mundi in the show. However, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. As of right now, I think the show's okay. I honestly do. I think it was a decent, slow-burn mystery thriller with some really kick-ass fighting. But the thing that really brought it down was its over-predictability. Maybe they wanted to play it safe before really kicking things off for season 2, where things get really crazy and more experimental. The experiment comes into it like, oh, Sith, you know, dark side stuff. Let's see what we can do with the horror elements and stuff like that. That could be kind of neat. And I would love that. It's too much to ask for it to be a horror series, but honestly, I'll check out season 2. I don't think season 1 was egregiously bad that I want to stop watching it. And honestly, again, and I know people are going to call me a shill just for being like lukewarm about the show, it was okay. I'm not offended. Just because I'm not offended doesn't mean that like I'm over the moon about the show. I liked Obi-Wan Kenobi way more than this show, honestly. I got way more out of Obi-Wan Kenobi than The Acolyte, because in Obi-Wan Kenobi, it really fleshed out the original trilogy. Certain scenes are recontextualized thanks to Obi-Wan Kenobi. And even then, I like the relationship between Obi-Wan and Vader. seeing Vader being kicked ass. Oh my god, like I love Vader going full Vader in the show. There's other things, but I'd rather save it for a full video. The point is that there were things that I got from the show that I really didn't get from the Acolyte, other than some really cool action scenes, because I actually really enjoyed Obi-Wan for what it was, and it was nowhere near as good as the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian or even Andor. If you dislike the show, that's perfectly okay. What I'm not okay with is being so disillusioned that like this show ruined everything, that it ruined your childhood. I don't respect people who renounce their Star Wars fandom because of some bad movies and shows that have been since 2012. You can have your headcanon. If in your eyes that the Star Wars series ended in 2012 when George Lucas sold the rights to Star Wars, that's perfectly okay. Because my favorite movie of all time, my favorite Star Wars movie I should say, is Return of the Jedi. That is my all-time favorite Star Wars movie. It had the most perfect ending I've ever seen in anything ever. And this is somebody who actually likes the sequels. I honestly would have preferred that the Skywalker saga had ended with Return of the Jedi. When it comes to Star Wars, I am optimistic, not delusional. If there's something bad, if there's bad storytelling, bad writing, I will talk about it and call it out. But I'm not going to get upset because a girl has a lightsaber, or if a movie and a show has LGBTQ representation. I cannot stand racist, sexist, or any kind of hateful bigotry. But if you do not like anything that has come out after 2012 and are reasonable and would like to discuss where the lore is at, writing, directing, everything that is necessary to tell a good story, and would like to have a civil conversation about it, I am more than welcome. You don't have to like the sequels. You don't have to like the shows or anything that's come out after 2012. We can have a conversation about it. Or we can even talk about the stuff that came before 2012. But I want to hear what you think. What did you think about the Acolyte? And if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Please stick around. We have a lot of things to talk about.